So in this video, I thought it would be a fun activity to do a mashup between two building information data sources within the context of Power BI. The first data source we'll be looking at is going to be the harvested data that's produced by the tracer add-in. The tracer add-in for Revit allows you to harvest your document data into an open database such that you can use it in the context of tools like Power BI or other business intelligence tools. Tracer also includes a Power BI visual that can let you render diagrammatic plans and element location diagrams. The other data source I'm going to be looking at is dRofus. dRofus is a popular project planning and data management software. It uses a centralized database to extend the data inside of your building information models. So that means you can start to integrate things like room requirements, room data sheets, extended fixture information, information about other systems. And dRofus exposes a number of tools inside of Revit that lets you track this external data alongside your model. So as an example of this, I actually have a sample model spun up that is connected into dRofus. This is the popular Revit advanced sample project, but it's been extended with dRofus connections, so we can start to track this model against external data that's stored in dRofus. You can see I have the dRofus plugin installed. If I click on this lounge room, for example, you get the information that you would expect to see inside of Revit under the properties. You'll also see that we have a dRofus tab here, and this room is connected in with data inside of the dRofus database. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a dashboard that leverages this building information model and then also leverages the data stored in dRofus to kind of provide a comprehensive view of the project within Power BI. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to export this model using the tracer add-in. So that this will allow me to have a database that I can access inside of Power BI and start to visualize some of that information. So you can see I can go in here, I'm going to select the export file and go ahead and save it. And what it's going to do is it's going to process the elements and produce a SQLite database file that I can access inside of Power BI using open database connectivity and so on. So we have our first source of information here available to us. The other source of information that I'll be exploring is in dRofus. So I have the dRofus application opened up here. This allows me to navigate through all the various types of information stored in dRofus, and the data source I'm going to be most interested in is going to be found under the reports and export setting. And what they've done for this plugin and tool is that they've exposed this ability to access different types of reports and also create custom reports. If I scroll down here, you can see that there's this area called Excel exports, which allows you to, of course, download the information to Excel, but you can also do direct connections into the data using Power Query. And what that allows you to do is hook Power BI up directly to this data inside of their cloud database and access those different components. So let's start building up a dashboard inside of Power BI. I'm going to jump over to Power BI here. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a connection into the tracer database. So I'm going to find my data files. And you can see that I have the Revit 2019 dRofus trial mode database here. I'll do a shift and I'm going to copy as path. And I'm going to go ahead and go to get data in Power BI. And when I'm in get data, I'm going to go to ODBC. I'm going to search for the ODBC connector. And I'm going to connect to that. And that's going to open up this familiar dialog where I can then set the SQLite 3 data source. And under advanced options, I need to create a connection string, database equals, and I'll copy and paste the path to that database file and make sure I need to make sure I remove the quotes as well there. I'm going to hit OK. And this is going to hook me into that exported data from the Revit file. It's going to open up a series of views and tables that I can access. In this case, I'm going to be primarily interested in the room data. So I'm going to scroll down and find my room elements table. And I'm going to go ahead and hit load. And this is going to load in that table with all of the different room element information, including parameter data and the graphical location information that I can use to render it. So now that we have this loaded, you can see that we have the room elements as a data source inside of Power BI. These are all the Revit properties that are assigned to various rooms. And what I want to do now is combine this information and join it in with the information coming out of dRofus. So I'm going to go ahead and collapse that view for the time being. And I need to go into dRofus and get to the report that I want. So the first report that I want to pull in is this rooms export here that's got some preset fields for department name and number. There's sub-department information, some of the room function information. There's also some interesting fields here for the programmed area versus the designed area. That's a popular metric that a lot of planners like to use, is understand what's programmed versus what's designed. So I want to get this data here, and the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to use the Power Query command in dRofus to get access to the web API that will stream data from this project into Power BI. So you can see that I have this ability to copy and paste this API request URL. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that in. You can do a Control-C, Control-V, or you can also do a copy to clipboard button here. Go ahead and close that. And I'm going to jump back over to Power BI here, and I'm going to choose Get Data, scroll down to the web. And I'm going to go ahead and paste that URL and hit OK. And what this is then going to do is it's going to launch the Power BI query editor that I can use to get this data. So what you'll see here is that we are getting a list of records, and what I need to do is convert this first to a table so I can get access to the tabular information. I don't need to select a delimiter or anything like that. I can just hit OK, and this is now converted to a table. And what I'm going to do is then expand this table so I can see the different fields, and to make it a little bit more readable, I'm going to make sure I uncheck use original column name as prefix. And hit OK. And now you can see I have this tabular information about the dRofus data about the room objects. And what I'm going to do here is rename this table to something that is a little bit more friendly when I get into the actual report building area here. So I'm going to go ahead and rename this. I'm going to call this dRofus rooms. And then I'm going to close and apply it. And you'll see that Power BI is going to work. It's going to evaluate that connection, detect some relationships if there are any. But now I have my room elements from Revit exported using Tracer, and now I have my dRofus rooms accessed through their web API. I'm then going to go to the model of Power BI and check the room relationships. And what you'll see is that there is no relationship established out of the box here. It didn't detect matching field names or anything like that. But what I do know is that if I go into Revit and I click on my room and check out some of the Revit properties, there is a parameter on this room called name and numbers room ID, and this is giving me a number of 47 in this case. So this parameter is the identifier that dRofus is using for that particular room object. And if I go back into Power BI here, you'll see that there is an ID column for the dRofus rooms. So what I need to do is I need to join these two data sources together. And so the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to find my name and numbers room ID and simply join it in to the ID of the dRofus rooms table. And what this is going to do is it's going to create a connection. And now these two data sources using that ID as the joining tool are now connected. So if I wanted to pull up information from Revit and then look at it alongside information in dRofus, I can do that. So why don't we do that right now? I'm going to go back into the report builder, and I'm going to start building up a report that's going to use information from both of these objects. And one of the tools I'm going to use that's going to combine information from both of these sources is going to be the tracer visual. So I need to make sure that I import my tracer visual. I'm going to import it from a file. I'm going to go ahead and import, and it's going to allow me to navigate to the tracer path here that installs the visual when you first install tracer. And I'm going to go ahead and hit open, and that's going to load the tracer visual into my file. And I'm going to start building up a diagram that's going to use some of this information from both of these sources. So the first bit of information I need for this visual is going to be the location information. And so when I expand my room elements, you'll see that we have the element location available right here. I'm going to pass this into my geometry column, and that's going to show us the rendering of these kind of room boundaries in the view. I'm also going to go through a couple of other steps here by doing my summarized geometry, so this visual will interact with other visuals properly. And what I want to do is start creating another filter in this view that will let me understand these rooms by level. So I'm going to go ahead and create a filter here, slicer filter. And I'm going to use the level name, which is level :1 in this case, which will give me a human readable level name here. So if I go in and now select entry level, that's going to isolate the rooms for the entry level, second floor, and third floor, like so. Now, in past tutorials, what I've done from this point is I say, okay, well, I want to categorize these objects and color code them. And more often than not, I'll do something like take the name field out of this rooms table and pass it in for the category, which is going to color code each of the rooms based on the name of the room as it exists in Revit. But because we have dRofus data available to us, I can start using some of the dRofus rooms data to override some of this information. So with this case, I know that there are some information. There is some information for the room function and subfunctions of the space that go beyond just the name. So I can say, well, let's grab this function name here and pass that in. And what that's going to do is it's going to color code it based on some departmental information. So it's taken anything related to training, for example, and is now color coding it. So I'm now able to start cross-referencing these data sources. And to make that even a little bit more apparent, what I'm going to do is build up a table alongside of it as well. I'm going to take this table tool here, pass it over here, and expand it a little bit. And what I'm going to do is start describing a table that is also going to combine information from both of these data sources. So I'm going to, for example, get the element name. So I'll find the room name here, pass that in. So this is going to itemize all of the rooms from the Revit model. And I'll also grab the number, like so. And you'll see that I now have name and numbers coming from Tracer and Revit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and I'm going to get the function name from dRofus. And I'm also going to get the function number from dRofus. So now we are seeing a single table that's describing both of those attributes for the room, again, from Revit and then dRofus combined together. And where this starts to become pretty powerful then is I can I'm now starting to build up this logic in my dashboard that's combining both of these sources. So what I'll do is I'll start to maybe do some filtering so I can select this particular function inside of the visual, and it's going to filter out my table so I can just start to see that information about those selected things. I'm getting both, again, the Revit information and the dRofus information. I think it's pretty cool that dRofus allows you to do things like tracking area requirements, programmed versus designed, for example. So that might be something else I want to include in this particular table. Maybe I want to include the area information as it's being computed by Revit. So I'll take, for example, in this table, I'll take the area from Revit and put that into one column. So that's the computed area as it exists inside of Revit. And then what I'm going to do is take then the programmed area from dRofus and put it into the same column, the same table. So now we can start to see how Revit is computing certain area requirements against what the program requirements as it's stored in dRofus are expecting. So we can start to do design versus actual comparisons within this dashboard context. And then because we have this visual here, the tracer visual is allowing us to intuitively start to select these components and have them displayable inside of the Power BI environment. So again, there's all sorts of other fun things that one could do with this as well. If I go back into dRofus, there's things like items and rooms as a potential data source that I might want to combine in with this dashboard. And the way to do that is using similar steps as before. I can click on items and room in dRofus, occurrences, I go to Power Query. I'm going to copy that URL to my clipboard, and I'm going to jump back over here and do another web connection. And paste that web connection there, hit OK. And it's going to jump me into the Power Query editor in Power BI, and I'm going to do a similar set of operations. I'm going to do a to-table operation to convert that data source to a table, and then I'm going to repeat my operation here of expanding those columns and make sure I'm unchecking that prefix. Hit OK, and now we're getting this information about the some of the objects by room. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on this and rename it. I'll call it dRofus item occurrences, and I'll load that into the table as well. So what I'll see here is that after these query changes are applied, we're going to end up with another table that I can use. And what I need to make sure I'm doing is also maintaining my data model. And what I see here is that it's already detected the ID to ID relationship between these things. So all the way from room elements in Revit through dRofus to some item information that is also being stored inside of dRofus. So we're starting to get a good mashup of information between these two building information sources here. So what I want to do now is start to use some of that item occurrence information that we just brought in from dRofus and have it sit alongside some of this information about the rooms. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and start up a new table, and I'm going to position it here just below my room table, and I'm going to start building it up using some of the item occurrence information. So I'm going to go ahead and expand item occurrences, and I'm simply going to activate a few fields here related to the article name, number, price. In this case, it looks like all the pricing information is 0. That's okay for this demo. And I'm going to choose some information about some of the net quantity, maybe the other quantity information. Looks like those are basically the same value and so on. But because we have this relational model now established, I can start to click through on some of these rooms and start to see the the visuals start to filter, and this information about the items and articles appearing alongside this information about the actual room objects. And again, this is mashing up information from both of these data sources. And as I start to scroll through some of the levels in this project, some of the floor levels here, you'll see that we're also getting up-to-date information becoming filtered with this visual setup. So I personally thought this is a pretty cool kind of idea, that using a combination of different data sources and tools, combining dRofus with tracer data, we can start to get to these reports that combines building information and allows us to start to tell a larger story about the project. And oftentimes the story about a project goes beyond any single data source, and starts to really be told through the combination of different data sources that you can use to articulate insight, and make more informed decisions using the data at your disposal.